The council chamber was silent except for the soft hum of translation devices. Minho stood at the center podium, his hands clasped behind his back, watching as the votes appeared on the massive display screen above. One by one, the representatives of 47 alien species cast their votes. Green lights filled the screen. Resolution 7749 had passed with overwhelming support. Only humanity voted against it. Minho felt the weight of every eye in the chamber on him. Some looked triumphant. Others looked apologetic. Most simply looked relieved. The human ambassador took a slow breath and stepped forward to address the council. "The human delegation acknowledges the council's decision," he said, his voice calm and measured. "We accept the terms of Resolution 7749 without protest. Humanity will comply with all restrictions placed upon our expansion and technological development." Elder Vexter leaned forward from his elevated seat, his scaled face unreadable. The reptilian leader had guided the Galactic Council for 3 decades. His voice carried the authority of age and experience. "Ambassador Minho, the Council appreciates humanity's cooperation. These measures are not meant as punishment. They are necessary for the stability and peace of our galaxy. Humanity's rapid advancement has caused concern among many member species. Your people have only been part of this council for 120 years, yet you have expanded faster than any species in recorded history." Minho nodded slowly. "We understand the council's concerns, Elder. We will adjust our behavior to meet galactic expectations." Ambassador Quillith, the insectoid representative from the hive worlds, clicked her mandibles together in what might have been satisfaction. She had been the loudest voice calling for human restrictions. Her compound eyes glittered as she spoke. "This is a good day for galactic peace. Humanity must learn that aggression and unchecked ambition have no place among civilized species. You are young. You are reckless. These limitations will teach you patience and restraint." Several other representatives murmured agreement. Minho looked at Quillith for a long moment, then simply bowed his head respectfully. He said nothing more. There was nothing more to say. The session ended 30 minutes later. As the various delegations filed out of the chamber, a few representatives approached Minho. Diplomat Karas, a younger member from one of the neutral worlds, touched his arm gently. "Ambassador, I voted against the resolution," she said quietly. "This was wrong. Humanity has done nothing to deserve this treatment." Minho gave her a tired smile. "Your support is appreciated, Karas, but the decision has been made. We will adapt. Will you truly accept this? The restrictions are severe. Your exploration rights are cut by 70%. Your technology sharing is limited. Your trade routes are restricted. This will cripple human growth for generations." "Perhaps," Minho said softly. "Or perhaps it will teach us to focus inward, to build what we need without relying on the galaxy's approval." He excused himself and walked back to the human delegation's private quarters. Captain Yunwu was waiting for him there. Along with Chief Engineer Jiwan, they had watched the proceedings from the observation room. Jiwan's face was carefully neutral, but Minho could see the anger in her eyes. She had worked on joint galactic projects for 15 years. She had helped design systems that kept the Council's infrastructure running smoothly. And now the Council had voted to restrict her people as if they were criminals. "Orders, Ambassador?" Yunwu asked. Minho walked to the window and looked out at the glittering cityscape of Velthra. Thousands of species lived and worked together on this world. Humanity had helped build a quarter of the structures visible from this window. Human engineers had improved the power grid. Human doctors had stopped 3 separate plague outbreaks. Human diplomats had negotiated peace between warring species on 6 separate occasions, and the galaxy had just voted to put them in a cage. "Initiate protocol departure," Minho said quietly. Jiwan straightened. Heinwu's expression didn't change, but his hand moved to his communication device. "Confirm order, sir?" Hyunwoo asked. "Confirmed. Begin immediate but quiet recall of all human personnel from joint projects. I want every human engineer, scientist, doctor, and technician back in human-controlled space within 18 months. Fulfill every contract we have to the letter. Break no agreements. Leave no debts. But when we leave completely. Yuan nodded slowly. It will take time to extract our people from critical systems without causing immediate failures. Take the time, Minho said. I don't want to sabotage anything. I want to withdraw cleanly. Let them run their own systems. Let them discover what they've lost only after we're gone. What about the defensive installations we manage? Hyunwoo asked. Transfer operational control as training processes allow. Make sure the replacements understand the basics, but only the basics. If they want to truly understand the systems, they'll need to figure it out themselves. Over the next 3 weeks, quiet messages went out through secure human channels. To the general galaxy, nothing seemed different. Humans continued their work as always, professional and efficient. But behind the scenes, preparations were being made. G1 began the delicate process of cataloging every human contribution to galactic infrastructure. The list was staggering. Humans had their hands in virtually every major system across Council space. They had optimized trade routes that saved the galaxy billions of credits annually. They had designed communication protocols that allowed incompatible alien technologies to work together. They had created medical treatments for diseases that affected dozens of species. And now they would take that knowledge home. Minho attended one final council reception before the human delegation departed for Earth. Vexter approached him with what might have been concern on his alien features. Ambassador, there are rumors that humans are preparing to withdraw from many joint projects. Is this true? Minho sipped his drink and smiled politely. Humans are merely consolidating our resources. Elder, the restrictions placed upon us require significant changes to our operations. We must focus on internal development now. Surely the Council understands. But the projects you're leaving were vital collaborative efforts. And they will continue, Minho assured him. We're providing full documentation and training to replacement personnel. Every contract will be fulfilled. Every obligation will be met. Humanity keeps its word. Vexler looked uncertain, but he couldn't argue. Humans were doing nothing wrong. They were simply being compliant. As Minho left the reception, he passed Quillith in the corridor. The insectoid ambassador blocked his path. You accept defeat with grace, human. This is wise. Your species needed to be humbled. Minho looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and perfectly polite. Ambassador Quillith, humanity has not been defeated. We have simply been asked to leave the room. We're honoring that request. I hope the galaxy enjoys the silence. He walked past her without another word. 3 days later, the human delegation departed Velthera. Their ships left in a neat formation, following proper traffic protocols, broadcasting friendly farewells on all standard channels. Inside the lead ship, Minho stood on the bridge next to Hyunwoo and watched the Council world shrink behind them. They think they've won, Hyunwoo said quietly. Let them think that, Minho replied. Let them think we're going home with our tails between our legs. Let them think we're accepting punishment. They'll learn the truth soon enough. How long do you think it will take? Minho considered the question. 6 months before they notice problems. 12 months before they realize how serious it is. 18 months before they panic. And by then, it will be far too late to fix easily. And if they ask us to come back, then we'll decide if we want to. On our terms this time. Not theirs. The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying humanity's delegation home. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued its business, confident that it had solved the problem. They had no idea what was coming. The message arrived at Harmony Station at 0600 hours station time. Administrator Yinji read it 3 times before calling her senior staff together. The conference room filled quickly with department heads, most of them still finishing their morning coffee. I've received orders from Earth, Yinji said without preamble. We're evacuating Harmony Station. All human personnel are to return to human-controlled space within 6 months. The room erupted in questions. Harmony Station was the largest trade and residential hub in the outer sectors. Humans had designed and built 70% of its structure. More than 12,000 humans lived and worked here alongside 50,000 aliens from dozens of species. "What about our contracts?" asked the operations manager. "We fulfill every one to the letter," Yunji replied. "We maintain station operations during the transition. We train replacement personnel. We transfer all responsibilities properly. But when we leave completely." Over the next weeks, Yunji oversaw the most organized evacuation in galactic history. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was sabotaged. Every system was documented. Every procedure was taught to alien replacements. But the humans were thorough about one thing. They removed every piece of proprietary human technology from the station's core systems. The alien staff didn't understand why this mattered. The station still ran. The lights still worked. The air still circulated. Everything seemed fine. They would understand later. Halfway across the galaxy, Taeyun stood in his laboratory and looked at 20 years of research. The quantum research facility had been his life's work. He had helped discover 3 new principles of faster-than-light travel. His team had made breakthroughs in energy generation that benefited every species in the Council. Now he was packing it all up. "Dr. Taeyun, please reconsider," his avian research partner pleaded. "We're so close to completing the phase variance project. Another 6 months and we'll revolutionize interstellar communication." Taeyun continued carefully packing his equipment. "The project will continue, Thalrus. I've prepared all my notes. The methodology is clearly documented. Your team can finish the work. But you're the lead researcher. You understand the quantum mathematics better than anyone. Then it's time for others to learn." Taeyun sealed another crate. "I've published everything I can legally share. The rest is human proprietary research that I'm not permitted to leave behind." Thalrus looked confused. "Proprietary?" "We're partners. We've always shared research." "That was before," Taeyun said gently. "Things have changed. The Council made its decision. Humanity is adjusting accordingly." 2 weeks later, the quantum research facility went dark. Not broken, not sabotaged. Simply closed. The alien researchers who remained found themselves with mountains of data they didn't quite understand and equipment that worked perfectly but required expertise they didn't possess. Sora sat across from her business partner of 8 years and delivered the news he didn't want to hear. "I won't be renewing our trade agreement." Grexith, the alien merchant's face fell. He and Sora had built a profitable shipping empire together. Their company transported goods across 15 sectors. "But our partnership is successful," Grexith protested. "We've tripled our profits in 3 years. Why would you leave now?" "I'm not leaving the business. I'm consolidating operations into human space. You're welcome to continue the company, but I'm withdrawing my ships and my optimization algorithms." "Your algorithms?" "But those are what make our routes profitable. Without them, our costs will increase by 40%. Sora nodded sympathetically. "I understand. That's why I'm giving you 6 months' notice instead of the required 30 days. It should give you time to find new solutions. 6 months isn't enough to rebuild what you've created over 8 years? "Perhaps not," Sora agreed. "But it's more than the minimum required by our contract." "I'm sorry, Grexith. I wish things were different." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Human traders, engineers, scientists, and specialists were politely but firmly withdrawing from joint ventures. They gave proper notice. They fulfilled their obligations. They left no legal grounds for complaint, but they left. Deho coordinated the military withdrawal from his command ship. Humans had helped staff defensive installations throughout Council space. They had served on joint patrol fleets. They had maintained early warning systems that protected dozens of worlds. "Status of the Outer Rim defense grid?" he asked his operations officer. Transfer of control to Council forces will be complete in 2 months, sir. We're running training programs for replacement personnel. And the technical specifications? Basic operations manual provided. Advanced troubleshooting protocols classified as human military technology. Not included in the transfer. Deho nodded. The Council would learn to operate the systems. But if something went seriously wrong, they would have to figure out the repairs themselves. What about the patrol routes? Another officer asked. Those were human optimized based on our tactical analysis. The Council can establish their own routes. We're withdrawing our recommendations. It was all perfectly legal. Perfectly proper. And it would leave significant gaps in galactic defense capabilities, not immediately. But eventually. At first, the alien species barely noticed the human withdrawal. Some even celebrated it. Quillith gave speeches about how the galaxy was better off without human interference. Other species rushed to fill the positions humans were vacating. They were confident. They were capable. They had run civilizations for thousands of years before humans arrived. They would manage fine. A few aliens noticed something was wrong. An engineer here. A scientist there. People who had worked closely with humans and understood what they actually contributed. One of them was Thaurus, who now led the quantum research facility. 3 months after Taeyun left, he was still trying to make sense of the research data. I don't understand, he told his team. The math works on paper. But when we try to implement it, the results are inconsistent. Taeyun must have been compensating for some variable we're not seeing. Did he document it? A researcher asked. If he did, I can't find it. And I've gone through everything he left behind. What Thaurus didn't know was that Taeyun had documented everything. But understanding the documentation required a foundation in human, mathematical approaches that Taeyun had taken for granted. He had tried to explain it in his notes, but without someone there to teach the concepts. The alien researchers were struggling. Across the galaxy, similar problems were emerging. Systems still worked, but they worked less efficiently. Processes still functioned, but they required more resources. Research projects stalled because key insights were missing, and humans weren't available to help anymore. Hyman was one of the last human traders still regularly visiting non-human space. She had personal friendships with several alien merchants and felt obligated to maintain those relationships. But even she was pulling back. Why won't any humans take new contracts? One of her alien friends asked over dinner. We're offering excellent terms. Hyman chose her words carefully. Humans are focusing on internal development now. The Council's restrictions require us to adjust our priorities. But there are no restrictions on trade. No, there aren't, Hyman agreed. But there are restrictions on expansion and technology development. That affects everything else. We need to consolidate. This feels like more than consolidation. It feels like you're abandoning us? Hyman was quiet for a moment. We're not abandoning anyone. We're just not volunteering to help anymore. There's a difference. Back on Earth, Minho received regular reports on the withdrawal's progress. Everything was proceeding according to schedule. Human personnel were returning home. Contracts were being fulfilled and terminated. The galactic presence of humanity was shrinking day by day. G1 visited his office with the latest engineering assessment. We've successfully extracted 93% of our proprietary systems from Council infrastructure, she reported. The remaining 7% is too integrated to remove without causing immediate failures. We've left those in place with basic documentation. Will they be able to maintain them? Minho asked. G1 hesitated. Short term, yes. Long term? Doubtful. They don't understand the underlying principles. They're just following procedures. When something breaks beyond the documented procedures, they'll be stuck. How long? 6 months before they start seeing problems. Maybe a year? Minho nodded. It was all going according to plan. Not a plan for revenge. Not a plan to hurt anyone. Simply a plan to let the galaxy see what it had lost. Humanity had always been willing to help. Eager to contribute. Happy to share knowledge and expertise, the galaxy had responded by putting restrictions on them. By treating them like a threat rather than a partner, fine, they could manage on their own. Eung was the last administrator to leave Harmony Station. She walked through the empty human quarters one final time, checking that nothing had been forgotten. The alien staff who now ran the station seemed confident and capable. She hoped they truly were. As her shuttle departed, Yunji looked back at the massive structure. It had been her home for 15 years. She had helped build it. She had made it work. Now it belonged to someone else. Do you think they'll be okay? Her assistant asked. The first failure happened at 0314 hours on a Tuesday morning. The Velthora planetary defense grid went offline for 7 minutes. It came back online automatically and most people never noticed. But the technical staff noticed. They noticed because they couldn't figure out why it had failed in the first place. Run the diagnostic again, the senior technician ordered. The diagnostic showed all systems functioning normally. No errors, no warnings. Everything was green. Then why did we lose power to sectors 7 through 12? Someone asked. Nobody had an answer. The human engineers who used to maintain the system could have answered immediately. They had installed a complex series of redundancies that compensated for incompatibilities between alien power generation systems and alien computer control systems. When those redundancies were removed during the human withdrawal, the underlying incompatibilities remained. The system still worked. But now it was fragile. And the alien technicians didn't understand why, 3 days later, it happened again. This time for 11 minutes, Elder Vexler was informed of the problem. He ordered a full technical review. Across the galaxy, similar problems were emerging. They were small at first, barely noticeable. A communication delay here, a power fluctuation there, supply shipments arriving late, medical equipment requiring more frequent maintenance. Each problem was minor on its own. But together, they painted a troubling picture. Thaurus was working 16-hour days, trying to keep the quantum research facility operational. Half his team had quit in frustration. The projects that had seemed so close to completion 6 months ago were now hopelessly stalled. I don't understand, he told his remaining staff. We have all of Dr. Taiyun's notes. We have all his data. Why can't we replicate his results? A young researcher raised her hand hesitantly. Sir, I've been reviewing the old communication logs Dr. Taiyun used to have daily discussions with Dr. Jiwan on Earth, technical consultations about quantum field interactions. Those conversations aren't in the official research notes. Thaurus felt something cold in his chest. How many consultations? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. It looks like they were solving problems in real time through collaborative discussion. The research notes only show the final solutions, not the process of how they got there. It was worse than Thaurus had feared. The humans hadn't hidden anything. They had shared everything they were required to share. But the informal collaboration, the casual problem-solving, the daily exchange of ideas between brilliant minds, that couldn't be documented in formal research notes, and without it, the alien researchers were lost. Quillith refused to acknowledge any problems. She had been the loudest voice demanding human restrictions, and she would not admit those restrictions might have been a mistake. Minor technical difficulties, she announced to the council. Temporary adjustments as we transition to independent operations. Nothing to concern ourselves with. But privately, she was furious. 3 major projects under her oversight had failed in the past month. Projects that had been running smoothly for years was suddenly collapsing. She summoned the alien engineers who had taken over from human staff. Explain to me why? The fusion reactors on the outer colonies are operating at only 70% efficiency, she demanded, the lead engineer. A crystalline named Shar shifted uncomfortably. We're following all the documented procedures, Ambassador. We don't understand why the output has decreased. The procedures worked before. Yes, but the human engineers used to make constant small adjustments. Real-time optimization based on fuel quality, solar radiation levels, even gravitational variations from nearby moons. The procedures document the baseline operation, but not the continuous adjustment process. Quillith's mandibles clicked in frustration. Are you telling me the humans were manually optimizing every reactor in the system? No, Ambassador. They had developed some kind of predictive algorithm. But that algorithm was classified as proprietary human technology. We don't have access to it. It was the same story everywhere Quillith looked. Humans hadn't sabotaged anything. They had simply taken their expertise home with them. And that expertise had been far more critical than anyone realized. The trade routes were in chaos. Grexith, Sora's former business partner, was watching his company slowly die. Without human optimization algorithms, his shipping costs had increased by 45%. His competitors who had relied on human logistics support were in even worse shape. Some companies tried to hire human consultants. They offered premium rates. They offered partnership deals. They offered anything they could think of. The humans politely declined. I'm sorry, Hyman told one desperate merchant. I'm not available for external contracts at this time. I'm working on internal projects within human space. But we're offering triple your previous rate. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested. Perhaps you could hire consultants from another species? The merchant had tried. Alien logistics experts simply couldn't match what the humans had been doing. They were capable. They were intelligent. But they didn't have the human combination of adaptability, pattern recognition, and creative problem-solving. After a few more rejections, the galactic business community began to realize something troubling. Humans weren't refusing because the money wasn't good enough. They were refusing because they had better opportunities at home. Reports began reaching Vexler's office in increasing numbers. Supply chain disruptions, infrastructure failures, research projects abandoned, medical treatments no longer available, economic efficiency dropping across the board. He called for a comprehensive assessment of human contributions to galactic civilization. The resulting report was delivered to him 3 weeks later. He read it twice. Hoping he had misunderstood, he hadn't. Humans had been involved in 73% of major infrastructure projects. They had optimized 81% of trade routes. They had contributed to 92% of advanced research initiatives. They had developed medical treatments used by 40 species, and they had done it all so smoothly, so quietly. The most species never realized how dependent the galaxy had become on human expertise. How did this happen? Vexler asked his advisors. Humans are natural problem solvers, one advisor explained. When they saw something inefficient, they fixed it. When they saw something that could be improved, they improved it. They didn't seek credit. They just did the work. And we never noticed how much work they were doing. Another advisor added, they also have a unique ability to integrate incompatible technologies. Most species develop systems that work well within their own technological framework. But when you try to connect a crystalline computer system with a hive-world communication network, there are fundamental incompatibilities. Humans somehow bridge those gaps. They make things work together that shouldn't work together. And now those bridges are gone, Vexler said quietly. The situation continued to deteriorate. The defense grid failures became more frequent. Communication networks experienced increasing delays. 3 space stations reported life support issues. 2 colonies requested emergency supplies when their normal shipments failed to arrive. Kara's, the young diplomat who had voted against the restrictions, requested a meeting with Vexler. Elder, we need to contact humanity and ask them to return, she said bluntly. That would be admitting we made a mistake. We did make a mistake. A serious one. And every day we wait makes it worse. Vexler was silent for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. Attempt to contact Ambassador Minho, see if he's willing to discuss the situation. Kyra sent the message that same day. She received an automated response 3 days later. Ambassador Minho is no longer serving in an external diplomatic capacity. For matters concerning human galactic relations, please contact the Office of External Affairs on Earth. She tried the Office of External Affairs. Her message was acknowledged, but no substantive response came. Days turned into weeks. The Council sent additional messages, formal requests, diplomatic inquiries. All of them received polite acknowledgments and no real answers. Finally, after 6 weeks, a human representative named Sua responded to one of Kara's messages. Thank you for your inquiry regarding potential human assistance with technical difficulties. At this time, human resources are fully committed to internal projects. We appreciate the Council's interest in human expertise. If circumstances change, we will certainly consider future collaboration. Best regards. It was professionally polite and completely unhelpful. Kara showed the response to Vexler. They're refusing to help. No, Vexler said slowly. They're telling us they're busy. There's a difference. They're not refusing out of spite. They're simply saying they have other priorities. Can we make them help? Invoke old agreements? All human contracts have been fulfilled or properly terminated. They haven't broken any agreements. They've simply chosen not to make new ones. Quillith, when informed of the situation, insisted the galaxy would adapt. We managed before humans arrived. We'll manage after they leave. But privately, even she was worried. 3 more projects had collapsed. The Hive worlds were experiencing communication disruptions that were affecting their entire civilization. Quillith's own political position was becoming precarious. The Harmony Station disaster made headlines across the galaxy. The massive structure that Yunji had once administered suffered a catastrophic power failure that lasted for 3 hours. Life support had remained functional thanks to backup systems. But the station's main reactor had melted down and needed to be completely replaced. The investigation revealed a simple truth: maintenance procedures had been followed perfectly. But those procedures had been designed assuming someone with human-level systems integration knowledge would be supervising. Without that supervision, a minor coolant imbalance had cascaded into total failure. 17 people died in the accident. Hundreds more were injured. And Harmony Station, once the pride of galactic cooperation, was now operating at minimal capacity. It was no longer an isolated incident. It was a pattern. Elder Vexler stood before the Galactic Council and delivered the news nobody wanted to hear. We are facing a civilization-level crisis, he said, his voice heavy with age and regret. In the 12 months since humans withdrew from Council operations, we have experienced a 37% decrease in economic efficiency. 14 major infrastructure systems have failed. 23 research projects have been abandoned. Medical supply chains are disrupted across 40 sectors. The Council chamber was silent. Even Quillith, who had fought so hard to restrict humanity, said nothing. We believed, Vexler continued, that humans were one species among many. We believed that their contributions, while valuable, were not essential. We were wrong. Humans weren't just helping us. They were holding our civilization together? A representative from one of the outer worlds stood. Elder, what do you propose? I propose we acknowledge our mistake, publicly and formally, and then we ask humanity to return. Quillith finally spoke, her voice bitter. And if they refuse? Then we face the consequences of our own decisions. The vote was held 3 days later. The motion to formally apologize to humanity and repeal all restrictions passed with near unanimity. Only a handful of hardliners voted against it, but acknowledging the mistake was easier than fixing it. Minho received the Council's formal apology at his home on Earth. He was retired from active diplomatic service now, working as an advisor to the human government. He read the message 3 times, then forwarded it to President Doyan with a simple note. They're finally understanding. Doyan called a meeting of the human leadership. Minho attended via holographic link. So did Jiwan, who was now overseeing human technological development. The Council wants us back, Doyan said simply. What's our position? We make them wait, Jiwan said firmly. They made us second-class citizens. They restricted our rights. They treated us like a threat. We don't just go running back because they finally realize they need us. Revenge isn't productive, another advisor argued. This isn't revenge, Jawan replied. "This is establishing our value. If we return immediately, nothing changes. They'll take us for granted again. We need to make it clear that our help is a choice, not an obligation." Minho listened to the debate, then spoke quietly. "What does the galaxy need most urgently?" An analyst brought up a display. "Medical supplies? The distribution networks are failing. Several colonies are facing potential plague outbreaks without proper medicine." "Then we help with that," Minho said. "Not because the council asked, but because people are suffering. We send medical supplies as humanitarian aid. We make it clear the aid comes from humanity directly, not through council channels. We show the galaxy that humans care about people, even if we're not interested in working with their government right now." It was agreed. Within days, human medical ships began delivering supplies to the most critically affected areas. The supplies came with a simple message: from the people of Earth to the people of the galaxy. No payment expected. No political conditions attached. The impact was immediate and profound. Species who had never interacted much with humans suddenly saw them as saviors. The Council's formal apology was bureaucratic, but human ships arriving with medicine when children were dying? That was real. Still, humans made no move to rejoin Council operations. They provided humanitarian aid. They maintained minimal diplomatic contact. But they didn't return to the joint projects and collaborations that had once been their specialty. The galaxy continued to deteriorate. Karas led a delegation to Earth to formally request human assistance. They were received politely by Sua, the young human diplomat who had become the primary contact for galactic affairs. "We appreciate humanity's humanitarian efforts," Karas said carefully. "But we need more. We need your engineers, your scientists, your expertise in maintaining the systems you helped build." Sua nodded sympathetically. "I understand your position, but you must understand ours. For 12 years, humanity was an equal member of the Galactic Council. We contributed freely, we shared our knowledge openly, we worked to benefit everyone. And in response, the Council decided we were too ambitious, too aggressive, too dangerous. You put restrictions on us that you placed on no other species. That was a mistake. We've acknowledged that. You have. And we appreciate the acknowledgement. But acknowledgement doesn't rebuild trust. Your Council didn't just restrict our expansion. You sent a message that human efforts were not valued, that our contributions were seen as threats rather than gifts. Why would we rush back into that environment?" "Because people are suffering," Karas said quietly. "I know humans care about that. I've seen the medical supplies you've sent, please." "We're asking for help." Sua was quiet for a long moment. "I need to consult with my government. Please wait." The delegation waited for 3 days. Finally, Sua returned with humanity's answer. "We're willing to provide limited technical assistance in critical infrastructure areas. But on our terms, human engineers will operate independently, not as part of Council teams. They will report to human leadership, not to Council authorities. They will share knowledge at their discretion, not automatically. And all restrictions on human expansion and development must be permanently removed. Not just repealed. Removed with a constitutional amendment guaranteeing they can never be reinstated. It was a hard bargain. But the Council had no choice. They agreed. Human engineers began returning to critical projects. But it wasn't like before. Now they worked on short-term contracts with clear objectives. They fixed immediate problems but didn't integrate themselves into the galactic infrastructure the way they had before. They were helping, but they were keeping their distance. Borum, the governor of a human colony near Council space, started receiving refugees. Aliens from failing space stations and struggling colonies were showing up at human outposts asking for asylum. "What do we do with them?" Borum asked Earth. "Accept them if they're in genuine need," came the reply. "We're not monsters. But make it clear that they're asking humanity for help. Not the Council, U.S. The refugee situation became another symbol of the changed relationship. Humans were providing aid and shelter. But the Council, which had once led galactic civilization, couldn't even protect its own people. Meanwhile, human space continued to thrive. Jiwon's engineering teams had made breakthrough after breakthrough. The new faster-than-light drive was just the beginning. They had developed improved power generation systems, new medical technologies, advanced manufacturing processes, and they weren't sharing them with the Council. "It's not spite," Jiwon explained in a meeting. "It's protection. We shared everything before and got restrictions for our trouble. We're not making that mistake again. From now on, human technology is human technology. If others want access, they negotiate for it fairly." Intelligence reports revealed something the Council found even more troubling. Humans had made contact with several species beyond Council space. New species that had never joined the galactic community, and humans were building relationships with them. Trade relationships, scientific partnerships, defense agreements. The implication was clear. Humans didn't need the Galactic Council. They could build their own network of allies and partners. They could create their own community. The Council was becoming irrelevant to humanity. Vexter reviewed the reports with growing despair. 12 months ago, he had believed the restrictions on humanity were necessary and prudent. Now he understood they had been civilization's greatest mistake. "We didn't just restrict one species," he told his advisors. "We crippled ourselves. Everything humans did for us, they did voluntarily. They chose to help. They chose to share. They chose to contribute, and we responded by limiting them. We took their choice away, so they took their help away. And we're collapsing because of it." "Can we recover?" someone asked. "Eventually, maybe, if we're willing to fundamentally change how we operate. If we're willing to treat humans as true equals, not as junior members, not as a potential threat, as equal partners with equal voice and equal respect. And if we're not willing?" Vexter looked at the latest casualty reports from failing infrastructure. More deaths. More injuries, more suffering? Then we keep collapsing until we don't have a choice. Quillith had been removed from her position. Her political career was over. 3 separate species had filed formal complaints about her role in restricting humanity. She had become the symbol of the Council's failure. The Galactic Council chamber looked different than it had 2 years ago. It was smaller now. 7 species had withdrawn their membership, choosing instead to negotiate directly with humanity for the assistance they needed. The grand displays and elaborate decorations had been toned down. The chamber no longer celebrated galactic unity, because that unity had been revealed as an illusion. Elder Vexter stood at the central podium. He had aged visibly in the past 2 years. His scaled skin was duller. His movements were slower. But his voice was still strong as he addressed the reduced council. "We gather today to formally acknowledge what most of us have privately accepted for months. The Galactic Council made a catastrophic error in judgment when we restricted humanity. We did not simply harm one species. We harmed ourselves. We damaged the foundations of galactic civilization. And we did it out of fear, pride, and prejudice." He paused, looking at each representative in turn. "Today I propose we do more than apologize. I propose we fundamentally restructure how this council operates. No more majority votes that target specific species. No more restrictions placed on members simply because they succeed too well or grow too fast. True equality guaranteed by constitutional structure, not just diplomatic promises." The vote was unanimous. The council began drafting what would become the Charter of Free Cooperation. It would take months to finalize, but the principles were clear. Every member species would have genuine autonomy, protection from discriminatory restrictions, and the right to develop at their own pace, but the real test would be whether humanity chose to participate. Heroes led the delegation that traveled to Earth. She had become the primary liaison between the Council and humanity, one of the few alien diplomats that humans seemed to trust. The journey to humanity's homeworld felt longer than it actually was. She kept rehearsing what she would say. "How do you ask someone to rejoin a community that rejected them?" The human delegation met them at a conference center in Geneva. Sua was there, professional and polite as always. But to Kara's surprise, so was Minho. The retired ambassador had been brought out of retirement for this meeting. Ambassador Minho, Kara said, genuinely pleased. It's good to see you again. Minho smiled warmly. And you, Karas. You've done remarkable work these past 2 years. Your advocacy for change has not gone unnoticed. They settled into the conference room. President Doyan joined them via holographic link, as did several other human officials, including Jiwan. Karas presented the new Charter of Free Cooperation. She explained the structural changes, the constitutional guarantees, the protections for species autonomy and development. It's impressive, Minho said when she finished. You've addressed many of the concerns we raised. But I need to ask, why now? What changed? Vexther, who was participating remotely, answered directly. We collapsed. That's what changed. We finally understood that galactic civilization wasn't built on speeches and votes. It was built on thousands of small acts of cooperation and contribution. And humans were responsible for more of those acts than anyone else. When you left, everything fell apart. That's not a criticism of humans. It's a condemnation of us. We took you for granted. Doyan spoke from his holographic link. And if we return? What happens when we're successful again? When human colonies grow faster than others? When our technology advances beyond what makes others comfortable? Will we face restrictions again? No, Vexler said firmly. The new charter makes that impossible. Species can't be targeted for success. The Council can regulate specific actions that harm others, but it cannot restrict growth, exploration, or development simply because one species is better at those things than another. Forgive me, Elder, but words on paper didn't stop you last time. No, Vexler admitted. They didn't, and I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. What I can tell you is this: the galaxy has learned a lesson that cost us dearly. We know now what we lost, and we know that we cannot afford to lose it again. That's not a guarantee, but it's the truth. There was a long silence. Finally, Jiwan spoke. We've had 2 years to develop independently, to build our own networks and partnerships, to advance our technology without sharing it. Frankly, we've enjoyed it. We've made breakthroughs we might never have made if we were still focused on galactic cooperation. Why should we give that up? Kairos felt her heart sink, but Minho held up a hand gently. What Chief Engineer Jiwan is saying is true, but it's not the complete picture. May I? Jiwan nodded. Minho turned back to the alien delegation. Humans thrive on challenges and cooperation. We've done well alone, yes. But we miss the exchange of ideas with other species. We miss the collaborative problem-solving. We miss feeling like we're part of something larger than ourselves. We left because we had to protect our dignity. But we never wanted to leave. We wanted to be treated fairly, and if we can guarantee that, Kairos asked hopefully, then we're willing to discuss terms, Doyan said. But understand, we're not going back to how things were. We're negotiating a new relationship as equals, with full autonomy over our own development, with the right to share our knowledge or not as we see fit, with the understanding that we're choosing to participate, not being required to. We understand, Vexler said, and we accept those terms. The negotiations took 3 weeks. Human lawyers and diplomats worked with council representatives to establish clear boundaries and expectations. Humans would rejoin the council as full members, but they would maintain independent control of their technology, their expansion, and their internal affairs. They would contribute to galactic projects by choice, not obligation, and they would have the right to leave again if they felt their interests were not being respected. It wasn't the unconditional reunion that some council members had hoped for, but it was fair. And fairness was what had been missing all along. Minho was invited to be part of the human delegation that would return to the council. He declined. I'm an old man now, he told Sua. This is work for younger people. You've done brilliantly. You should represent humanity going forward. I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Sua said. Yes, you could have. You just didn't know that yet. The galaxy needs to see humanity's future, not its past, Go, make us proud. 3 months later, the first joint human-alien project since the withdrawal was announced. It was a medical research initiative focused on a plague affecting one of the outer colonies. Humans would contribute their expertise. Alien species would provide resources and different scientific perspectives, but this time, the project was structured as a partnership of equals. Humans maintained control of their proprietary research. Knowledge was shared willingly, not automatically. Credit was distributed fairly. It worked beautifully. Thalrus, who had struggled so much after Tayun left, was invited to join the project. He worked alongside Dr. Yunji, who had been the administrator of Harmony Station and was now leading human medical research. "I owe you an apology," Thalrus said during one of their work sessions. "I didn't understand how much you were doing for us. How much you were compensating for our weaknesses. I thought you were just another species among many." Yunji smiled. "We didn't need you to understand. We just needed you to respect us. There's a difference. And now? Now we're building something better. A community where everyone contributes what they can and everyone receives fair recognition for it. That's all we ever wanted." The reconstruction of galactic civilization was slow. Many systems that had failed during the collapse had to be completely rebuilt. But this time, they were built with better foundations. Humans contributed their expertise, but so did other species. Everyone learned to value everyone else's contributions. The galaxy would never return to exactly what it had been before. Too much had changed. Too many lessons had been learned. But perhaps that was for the best. Harmony Station was repaired and reopened 5 years after the disaster. The dedication ceremony included representatives from dozens of species. Borum, who had accepted so many refugees during the crisis, gave a short speech. This station was built through cooperation. It failed when that cooperation ended. And now it's reborn because we've learned to value each other. Let this be a reminder. We're stronger together, but only if together means equal. Back on Earth, Minho watched the ceremony on his home screen. He was retired now, truly retired, spending his days gardening and writing his memoirs. His book about the withdrawal and return was already a bestseller across the galaxy. G1 visited him that afternoon, as she often did. "Do you think they've truly learned?" she asked. It was the same question she had asked him years ago. Minho's answer was different now. "Some have. Maybe most have. But people forget. Civilizations grow complacent. In 50 years or 100, they might take us for granted again. They might start seeing our success as a threat instead of a contribution. Then we'll leave again. Will we? Or will the next generation of humans feel too integrated to walk away? Will they choose comfort over dignity?" Yuan considered that. "I don't know. But I think you've given them a blueprint. You've shown them that leaving quietly can be more powerful than shouting loudly. That dignity is worth protecting, even at great cost. That's a lesson that can be taught to each new generation."